Welcome back to another episode of the Ultimate Intimacy Podcast. And we're continuing our great discussion we had with Austin Ellis last week, talking about how emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy go hand in hand. If you haven't listened to that episode, go listen to that part one first, and we'll dive into part two today. Ultimate Intimacy Podcast with Nick and Amy and Austin. Welcome back to the podcast, Austin.
Thank you. I'm excited to keep going with this discussion. So it's so important for people, to figure out how do we do this thing that we at once really enjoyed, and so many people can't seem to get back to it, right? So
Yeah, and
excited.
I would say this is probably the most common problem that we see, right? That imbalance, men just not knowing how to step it up emotionally. I mean, this is what we see from a lot of couples.
And women
Right.
not being able to step it up sexually or vice versa,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or vice versa. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of took some notes at the end of the last one of some things to talk about, and I think maybe where we start is right, when you get married, a lot, I mean, and I recognize that people in, second, third marriages, but if we look at like kind of when you typically start out, your life is typically in a different situation. You add kids later, or you're getting married and you already have a new situation with, stepkids or whatever. And so the conditions that allow people to feel really connected, oftentimes very quickly after marriage, are totally different.
That's a
Hmm.
good
And
point.
and so people aren't, it's like they're not prepared for how do we maintain this when life is different,
Hmm.
right? In my world, in the therapeutic world, like there's very common things that's like every couple is going to hit these, and every couple thinks they're going to be okay when they hit it until they hit it, okay?
Right.
One of those is living together. One of those is pregnancy. One of those is having a child. Pretty soon, right after pregnancy, a man is also facing a much greater financial fear, whether or not they're doing okay, whether or not she's working, because now he's thinking of, is she going to be home with the kids? How are we going to balance, right? So all of a sudden, you're both going through two different sets of things
Yeah.
while
Hmm.
thinking you're going through the same thing. It's like, oh, we're having a baby, for example, right? But you're both feeling that totally differently, right?
Hmm.
And so the reason I bring this up is couples can thrive in a variety of conditions. Most of them only know how to thrive in the conditions in which they fell in love. And so it's just a little bit of skill set development typically of, okay, you're in some different circumstances, you need some different tools, and you can get back to, what was good. The other place too that I think is important, we talk about needs, right? Like I have my needs. It's pretty mature to be able to say, hey, are some of my needs because I'm not willing to grow, I'm not willing to heal, and so I just want you to fulfill things for me. When a husband and wife both together will say, hey, what's mine to take care of, that's not your responsibility to make me feel better versus what's ours together. And so I often shift the conversation to, hey, yeah, by all means, let's look at needs, but let's look at wants, right? Do
Hmm.
you do you want to be in a relationship with someone who wants to meet what's important to you, or do you want the bare minimum needs, right? Most people will say, yeah, I want you to be happy, not just meet your baseline needs, right? And so if you can start to get in tune with like what helps me feel the most connected, where I feel in love with you and it's easy for me to give love. Like if each person gets in tune with that, then it's a matter of are you going to do it or aren't you, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah, you
totally.
made a great point, and we actually just did a podcast on this not too long ago, stating no one ever teaches you how to be married, right? Because exactly what you're saying, all you know is that what you're going through
Or what
then
you've
you get
seen.
yeah, you get married, and all of a sudden it's two people living together with different perspectives, and you have children and all these different things, and I love that you hit on that because now all of a sudden you're expected, how do we stay connected or grow our marriage with all this, I don't want to call it turmoil necessarily, but different things going on that you have to navigate.
Right. Yeah, there's something we touched on a little bit last time that I think is really valuable for couples right now. right? In my field, we can look at all sorts of data from the past, and marriage was approached differently in the past, so was intimacy. And I
Mm.
think we've come a long way. Like, there was places where people didn't have rights, there was fear, there was, you had to stay in a bad situation. And so we've had a lot of progression in a positive direction. But with that, there's been things missed. And what I want to get to with that is I think a lot of couples now, they miss the idea that, hey, we're going to get together and it's going to expose both of our, weaknesses, our selfishness, our insecurities. But we're committed to creating this daily, this connection, this intimacy between us. And if if people can understand you're going to hit opposition and you overcome it together, and then there's another level of benefit. But what most people do is like, you're not making me happy, I'm out, or I'm pulling
Mhm.
back. Does that make sense? And so
Yeah.
I think past generations, based on the data, it was like, we know this is going to be hard. We're going to
Mm.
work to create, and I mentioned this, like the data in our last episode, a lot of women said like, I think it was like the average was love for marriage was like 7 on the list, but it wasn't I never want love. The idea was I'm gonna learn to love, right?
Yeah.
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 And so right now we typically marry someone that we're attracted to, that we love. And then so we already have that baseline where a lot of the past generations didn't have that baseline. And we go, well, if it doesn't come easy,
Yeah.
I'm gonna just look at my phone all day or whatever, check out porn or all the things, right? So, any
Or
thoughts on that?
or you hear people that fall out of love, and it's not that you really fall out of love, you just stop trying and doing the things that caused you to be in love in the first place.
So I think it really, like we talked in the last episode, part one, it really comes down to that all of a sudden that disconnect, right? Like, well, you're not meeting my emotional needs and you're not meeting my sexual needs, which is a lot of the case. Sometimes it's just emotional, whatever.
Right,
But we get to that standoff that me and Nick talk about a lot on this podcast that you're not meeting my needs, why should I meet your needs? And that whole selfishness comes out,
right,
and then that barrier, and you start getting more disconnected. And then I feel like you get lazy.
right.
So
Yeah,
it starts with like selfishness, my needs aren't getting met, and then you both start to disconnect, and then you just
Why
start
even
getting
try
lazy
anymore?
in the
Yeah.
marriage, right? Like what do you have to say about that?
yeah. I think that happens a lot. I think there's a lot of, frankly, there's a lot of entitlement that people enter marriage with, and they feel owed, and it's like a quid pro quo trade kind of deal.
Hmm.
Mm.
The best marriages are not built on trade. The best marriages are built on I love you, right? And I want what's good for you. And so, to your point, Amy, I think that selfishness is born out of that entitlement, the kind of these oftentimes unspoken expectations. You didn't meet my expectation, and now what you're getting from me is my anger, and I don't even know why, right? And so, I think with a lot of couples, a lot of the work I do early on is, do you even know what your spouse wants? No, I just see anger. I just see, shutdown or whatever. So, right, this openness, and you need safety to have openness. You need a sense of care. A lot of people kind of harden their hearts, and like it's really tricky because the people that typically shut down, like when I talk to them one on one, for example, they will tell me they want love and connection, but they're protecting themselves. That's why they're shut down. And
Right.
so we have to work through the emotion there. But a lot of times I'll say, how is disconnection and punishing your spouse ever going to equal connection? Like disconnection, anger never equal connection and love. Like that's a bad formula, right?
Yeah.
And so this idea of working through, what's blocking me from pouring in, for a lot of couples, you can have a conversation of like, do you want to have a happy marriage? Yeah, I would too. What does that look like for you? And it doesn't have to be exactly the same, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
It's so true.
right,
Yeah, it doesn't have to look
right,
exactly the same. If I were to ask Amy, what does that look like to you and what does that look like to me, there's probably going to be a lot of different things in there.
Oh,
And I'm going to need
absolutely.
to meet those needs, and
right.
she's going to,
Yeah,
or I should say desires or wants,
yeah,
right?
yeah. All of them, right? Like we do have needs for sure. I just like to help people think a little bit bigger. Like, what if we do what you want? Like, and it can be the needs and the wants. That's where marriage can be really cool because it's like, hey, you can create a new vision. I'll tell couples often, or I'll ask them, I'll say, how much time did you spend like planning a wedding, right? Several months. Cool. How much time did you plan a marriage, right? Or life together? And so you're planning, well, let's
Mhm.
call it 3 months for a 1 day thing, right? You have this vision for the flowers and the cake, blah, right? 3 months for 1 day. And then I'll say, how long did you plan for, I don't know, the next 60 years? Oh, we didn't do that. Right.
Right.
Okay. Because you just thought it would work. But the best marriages are there's vision, and then I would let's say like an architect, right? Like you might have a vision, but if nobody taught you how to create that marriage, like if your parents' example's great, but if they didn't teach you the skills to do what they're doing
Right.
and your partner doesn't have that, then you can have vision and even blueprints, but if you don't have the skills to carry that out, like, and that's where people
I
being
think that
able to
was
say,
exactly
I
our
need
marriage.
Mhm.
Amy and I both knew what we wanted, but we went through a lot of turmoil because we didn't have the tools that
Mhm.
we needed. A lot of it, wouldn't you
I
say?
think we both came in with expectations that things were going to stay hot, passionate. I was going to get the things that I married for from him, which I didn't at first, and he was going to get, the things that we had were going to continue. And so,
Right.
like what you're talking about, this vision, I think they
Yeah.
kind of goes hand in hand with these expectations. We have
Right.
these expectations in this vision, and then when they're different or they go off, all of a sudden we're like,
Yep.
this isn't going to work.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, the one of the mistakes I made was, I mean, truthfully, in early in marriage, I honestly didn't understand my wife's needs, and I kind of thought she should need them or want them. I was like, no, my way's better, kind of thing.
Uh,
And you have to like try to understand one another. Like men and women are totally different. We're not the same, obviously. And so this understanding of like, I want this marriage to be really amazing for you. Help me understand what that looks like, and not in a so I can be, controlled by you or whatever, but so I can show you love because I love you.
mhm.
And so one of the things I think we bring up real quick, I wrote these down, and most couples don't think of this. We started last episode with emotional intimacy, sexual intimacy, and I think I mentioned sexual intimacy in that.
Oh, you mean
I often,
spiritual?
or yeah,
Yeah.
excuse me,
Yeah.
spiritual. I often talk to clients about that's kind of like this soul to soul concept. Like I'm going to bring all of me, my mind, my emotions, my body, like I'm in.
Mhm.
Um, but we talk therapeutically, we often talk about intellectual intimacy, an ability to have stimulating, meaningful conversations. Some people, like I remember specifically one woman, I listed that. She's like, I've never heard that term. She's like, that's what I've been craving more than anything,
Mhm.
right? And so, like, what does that look like? This intellectual interaction. I put recreational intimacy.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
a lot of people like, I want to have fun with you. Like,
Mhm.
it's cool to go do my hobby with the guys, or like, I want to share my favorite things in life with you. That's really valuable. I put intimacy around the use of time, energy, and vision. So if we look at like this concept of into me see, I'm going to let you in on how I want to use our time. I'm going to let you in on how I want to use my energy. I'm going to let you in on my vision for our family, for our kids, for like whatever. I wrote parenting intimacy. I rarely hear people talk about that. For a lot of women, especially, if they can have a conversation where they feel like he's equally like invested in that, that's where I would say 75% of women actually feel the closest there, and a lot of them aren't aware of it until we give language to it. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Oh
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Absolutely.
And then financial intimacy is another one, right? This openness, this transparency. Um, so if couples can start one getting in tune with these things, and then it is a risk sometimes to share, but like, hey, I want to let you into what I would like to create with you, and I'm interested in what you want too. Now you can start to build a marriage intentionally instead of reactively. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree with everything you're saying. When it's reactive, you're gonna have just constant conflict.
Mhm.
Right.
Like you
Right.
said, building that together and, how can I asking those questions? And I would say most people don't ask those questions. Like just as simple as like you said, going to your spouse and saying, "Hey, what does this mean to you?" Or
Mhm.
how can I make you feel this way? Or what do you want in our marriage?
Oh, absolutely. And going back into this like emotional, sexual, why those things and bringing the spiritual and all those other kind of areas of intimacy that kind of I feel like kind of go in with that. I mean, they both are all combined, but more into the emotional, that make the sexual intimacy so great. Let's just talk about, can we just dive into like commitment? I think what happens is that it is getting easier to turn selfish or turn to our phones or turn to divorce and just kind of be like, I give up, right?
Right.
Like I think back in the days there wasn't the
All these distractions and
distractions, but there wasn't this giving up mentality. And so we talked about in part one where sexual intimacy, just as much effort needs to go into that as the emotional intimacy. And you were saying things like when a couple is like, I'm committed to, yes, absolutely creating really strong emotional connection first, but I'm committed, keyword committed to let's make 2 nights a week minimum to be intimate. And not
Right.
just having sex, but like intimate
Right.
connection, how that changes marriage. And
Right.
we're also saying, how important that is for the lower drive spouse to like put that effort and commitment into that and just the changes that you see with that. I think and I've had to do this in my own marriage, like kind of step back and be like, how committed am I? And what does that look like? What does he need? And am I actually committed to his needs? Because he's committed to my needs. It needs to be equal there. And it's not always 50-50. But I think that we need to, and we say this a lot in our podcast, is like have this higher standard of living in our marriages. Like, what does commitment really look like? And are we really portraying love is an action word, right? We say we
Right.
love our spouse. We say, "Oh, I love you more than anyone." But do we actually show that? Do we show it in the way we talk to them, or that when we put our phone down, or that we get excited to go on date nights, or that we get excited to be intimate with them? Like this looks all different ways, but I don't know. I just think that society and nowadays we're missing that what commitment means, and
Right.
it's constant effort, right? Like I just think we're getting lazy,
that was a long
distracted or lazy.
that was a long question. Can you rephrase that to
Yeah.
him?
I think
I
he
got
knows where I think he's a therapist. He knows exactly where I'm going with that.
I
Like,
have long strings of things, Nick.
okay, do
Yeah,
you mean my exact
yeah.
question?
No, I got it. Yeah,
Okay.
a couple thoughts that I kind of jotted down, and I think you're touching on something like probably really important, like across culture, across religion, across like everything. Like the thing we're touching here is, I mean, this is from a therapeutic, like we have knowledge of this, right? We can gauge what is narcissism, what are narcissistic tendencies. The world is increasing in narcissism. I mean, that's
Yeah,
factual. It's not make
100%.
believe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the underlying component of that, it looks like selfishness, but if you go deeper, the deeper underlying component is people aren't having their attachment needs met. Okay. That's right. That starts in childhood, but it also happens in marriage. And I'll share this because it's important. No matter what happened in your childhood, truthfully, your marriage can be a remedy to create secure, healthy attachment. The reason I want to start here with this conversation of commitment is logically, most people are committed. Emotionally, a lot of people are more committed to their fear than they are to love. Okay. And so it can feel a little hard to face this, but a lot of times what I try to do gently is I say, look, you've told me your values. It's, you value being a good spouse. That's about you. That's not even about your spouse yet. You value being a good spouse. You value your spouse. You actually like your spouse. You value marriage and you value parenting and your kids, right? But what are you consistently choosing? Well, I'm choosing what looks like checked out. Okay. Why are you choosing that? Well, fear is typically the answer. Um, what else are you choosing? Well, I'm choosing anger. I'm choosing criticism. Okay. So you're not actually committed to what you value most. You're committed to protecting yourself or escaping discomfort when couples can be mature and say, "Hey, I don't get this right." And I would say it's really mature for every single human to say, "I kind of suck as a spouse a little bit," right? I'm trying, but we come to marriage imperfect. It's quite narcissistic, honestly, to think that you came as a whatever, 20-year-old, a 35-year-old, and you just like had it figured out. So if we can all kind of step in out of this and be like, look, I know I'm not going to get this right all the time, but I want to, and I'm willing to look at me so I can grow and I can operate from love instead of fear or anxiety or right. And going a little deeper, so we use the term commitment, and I think we probably should bring up the word covenant. Um, Across cultures, this isn't a Christian thing only, like
Yeah.
across cultures, across religions, the concept of uniting yourself through life, which was you go across cultures, like marriage is a life thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's bigger than a commitment. It is a covenant. And for those people that are married, if you don't know that you're in a covenant, it's probably worth like I made a covenant, right? You probably made vows. Even if you were in an arranged marriage, which still happens in parts of the world, there is an understanding that like I am in this thing.
Hmm.
And that's a daily effort. So many people are not thinking about their marriages for months at a time, honestly, right? And so, right, if going back to what you said, Amy, like if we step out of selfishness and laziness and we get in tune with our own values. One, what do I value? And then two, what do I want? Probably what you'll find is it's pretty available. I tell couples this, they don't love it. I'll say, I bet we can spend 2 days together and I bet you can go home and be happy, like pretty quickly. And they're like, no, we've been trying everything. And I'll like lovingly, I'll say, have you tried X, Y, Z, A, B, C? And they're like, we didn't even know about that. I was like, these are ingredients for a successful
Yeah.
marriage.
Right.
Let's put those ingredients in. We'll help you work through the path. Like, I'll be really transparent with this. There was a time where me and my wife had a kind of our core issues and we couldn't work them out, couldn't work them out, couldn't work them out. And then we had fallout from that. I was like, more pain because of that stuff. We got to a place and I was like, our original issues are actually worked out. You've made some changes, I've made some changes. Like our original struggles are like we could do this, but we'd had so much fallout damage, right? And I see this with a lot of couples. It's like the analogy in my mind is like there's a lake, okay, and there's a dam, right, that's creating the lake, and then there's this stream down below. By the time couples come to me, it's like that dam is broken and like everything's been destroyed.
Right.
Intimacy, communication, like all this damage. And very frequently I go, okay, like the damage is here. What broke the dam, right?
Mhm.
Like let's look at that. And what were the issues that were like pushing against the dam that didn't get resolved and then right, we had all this fallout. Very frequently, the initial stuff that started it is simply tied to a level of, I missed what you were trying to let me know. It wasn't unwillingness, it wasn't a lack of care, it was I didn't see it. I didn't understand it, or if I did, I didn't know what to do with it.
Mm.
And so one of our goals as a couples therapist is we unite the couple against the problem. Couples come in and they point the finger, you're the bad guy, right? And we try to go, it kind of looks like this happened to you. And you each did some stuff, but nobody wakes up and is like, I think I want to destroy my marriage today. And I think I want to see my wife cry. And I love when my husband is, sleeping on the couch. Like nobody's right. And
No.
so we help couples see that this happened to you and you can fight back against it and get back to good. That's where I think commitment comes in. I know we took a roundabout. Are you committed to the covenant? Are you committed to the person? And can you have the courage to go, when I pour back in, I'm going to get a better version of my spouse because my love does something. It's so cool when a wife and a husband believes that my love actually matters. I'm going to pour it in and I'm going to see that that's going to do something for all involved. Does that make sense?
Oh,
Love it.
absolutely. Yeah, you explained that perfectly. I think the other word that goes kind of hand in hand though is pride. I mean, I think when,
Hmm.
you can't let your pride down. We see so many couples that just like are, get in arguments over the stupidest thing. It's because of pride, right? You can't be wrong or, whatever. And I think pride just could be such a killer in marriage. You know,
Well,
I think,
you said most of the couples that come in this situation, where the dam is already broke, it's because they miss something.
yeah,
And so what I'm taking from like everything that you're saying is it all comes down to communication
sure, right.
because they missed something, right? It was either not said or they didn't understand what it was, they didn't know what that looked like, whatever, which
assumptions.
is totally assumptions. Yeah,
Right.
Rex. Like it all comes
Well,
down to like learning, having those tools to really be able to communicate. Like, I really need this from you. Well, what does that even look like? Well, let me tell you, right? And being willing to be like, and then I'm sorry, I messed up. I wasn't very good at that. I'm gonna try harder this week. And they're like, oh, thank you. That's
yeah,
simple.
sometimes in the therapeutic world we talk of like paradoxes. So I'll share the paradox, okay? We often say, so what you said is accurate. Like a lot of it breaks down to communication, but the paradox comes in is we also say when couples are connected, they can communicate just fine. Okay. And so the place where this comes into play is we need some communication skills, but we need the communication that's not just verbal. Okay. The communication is not, it's not knowledge, it's love. Okay. When I communicate love to you and you feel loved, we can talk just fine, right? We can navigate things, we're smart. You're right. It's when people are disconnected from love and they're bringing anger and fear and pride and shame. Shame is huge. We should probably have a full
Yeah, agreed.
podcast about shame. I don't know, right?
Yeah, we
But
do.
but this is what's very cool when couples come in for healing is oftentimes we're like, let's resolve the emotions that are getting in the way. You're not choosing anxiety, you're not choosing pride, you're feeling it, and now it's part of the divide.
Mhm.
That's a lot of places where emotional intimacy can actually be the deepest. For example, let's say a guy I'll just share transparently. I met with a couple a few days ago. Pretty extreme trauma that is in the marriage, but they were doing well with that. And then they experienced a trauma that you could never plan on that wasn't between them. I won't go into the details of that, but so I sat down and she was crying. She was hurting, and I was kind of glancing at my other eye, but I'm staying present. And I could just tell like it was not hitting him. Like I was
Mhm.
like,
The
he's pretty.
deepness of it.
Yeah, it was like he was. It was like he was taken out by what looked like pride. I'm like, man, he's just being hard-hearted kind of thing, right? Like she's pouring out her heart, she's crying, and he's just like stonewall kind of thing. And I turned to him and I comforted her and I turned to him and I said, you're pretty numb, aren't you? And I said, you know that hearing that should be painful for you, but you don't feel the pain right now, right? And he's like, I'm numb.
Mm.
And I said, and I because I've done this for a while, I knew where to go. And so I didn't try to make it intellectual. I softened my voice and I went really slow and I said, because you know that part of this hurt you created for her, right? That's what he doesn't want to touch because it's painful to know that you hurt your wife.
Yeah.
And I just said, I know what it's like to hurt a wife. I know how that feels internally. And I said, but right now there's an opportunity to see her in her pain and to heal that. And I said, that emotion you're feeling is shame, but it looks to your wife probably like you don't care. And I just turned to her. I said, "Am I getting that right?" And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, "I was just really vulnerable." And he
Mhm.
just has no word, right? So I came back and I said, "I don't think you're doing this intentionally." I said, "I feel like you're taken out by this shame, and it's looking like pride, right?"
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I won't go into all of that, but one of the things that happened is I helped him out of the shame by validating that it's hard and, it does make sense to feel bad about this. And it is hard to see your wife cry of something you did, but you're making it potentially worse by I hurt you and now I'm not comforting it, right?
Mhm.
But we got him back to a good place and she called me. We had a follow-up thing and I just kind of checked in and she said it was so valuable for me to see that when he was like not responding to me, like she had her, what she believed that was, right? And she's like, it was a total paradigm shift for me to see my husband as like also hurting that he hurt me. She's like, that's everything I wanted,
Yeah.
Right.
but he didn't have the ability to do that, right? And the place where, well, I should word this. He did have the ability. He just needed a little nudge, right? A little safety that I help provide. And the reason I share this is a very common thing in couples therapy. We pretty much know that within an hour, hour and a half, we can help couples leave connected. Doesn't mean everything's resolved.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that there's not work, but it's like should be able to leave with some hope that you two are capable, the pain of the past can be resolved, and you can gain the skill sets to build an amazing marriage, not a mediocre marriage. And that's where a lot of couples, it's interesting because we feel like we're going to go to couples therapy and it's like problematic. It's like we should probably call it like you're coming to marriage building school that should have been taught from you from age 0 to 20 or whatever. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Well, I love what you shared because what, like maybe a month ago now from this episode, you talked about betrayal, going through really hard things, and then for people that like you gave them hope that like you could be in a really hard place and your needs aren't being met and you're not communicating right, you're feeling disconnected, you're not feeling loved, and you could turn that around by starting like with a new foundation.
Right.
And so
One,
I
yep.
think that like this whole episode, whether you're feeling like sexually rejected or you're feeling emotionally rejected or just completely off in your marriage somewhere,
Yeah.
like Austin's really great at giving hope and giving tools to like just let's start this and build
Build what we
up, build
want.
it strong, right? Like to and I love that you've dealt with so many things that are just couples that are just broken in pieces at the very going down that river, the dam is broke, but you're like, hey, I can still help you rebuild a marriage that like creates ultimate intimacy. That's what we want everyone to have, right? So,
I feel really I had really some really great mentors and teachers and professors and one of the things that has been really valuable, like I mean, early in my career, everybody was coming in with betrayal. Like that episode we talked about, it was all sexual betrayal, which I mean, couples go through a lot of hard things, right? But that sexual betrayal is among the hardest for couples to repair from. But based on a lot of experience, like couples can come in and I can say from experience, like you can do this. Like there is a path. That hopelessness is where a lot of people are stuck, no matter, what the core.
right.
And so I hope in this episode, like there is a path. I don't want to use the term back because a lot of couples are like, oh, we never had it amazing. I would say
Yeah.
there's a path towards ultimate intimacy, right? There's a path to this concept of man and woman become united as one, right? And I'm fortunate to have had enough experience to see the Lord work in marriages where I go like, hey, I can give you a lot of great tools. I have skills, but like God can guide you to become your best selves together. And right, she's getting the best of the masculine and he's getting the best of the feminine. And so many couples are either flipped, right? They're flipped or they're just, they're self-protecting and they often one's bid, Gottman talks about this, like making an attempt, a bid to connect. And a lot of couples are missing that. And so I would just say marriage is meant to be the best. You're going to face challenges, but ideally you're facing those with your best friend and you have this space, let's call it your intimacy space, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, all this stuff. You have this thing between you two that can help you weather the storm. And coming out of that, where it's like, at least I have you, right? And we had great lovemaking and we had a fun date night. Now we can face life. So many couples are facing life disconnected. And that's everything we're trying to help with, right?
Right,
So,
right. Love it.
Oh, this has been a great podcast episode.
Continuation.
Continuation. And as Amy and I have said before, we have a lot of conversations off camera with Austin, and one of the things we just love is that, you don't need to rebuild something that you don't want. You can rebuild something new, and we'll do a deeper podcast on that as well. But if you're a couple out there listening, and even if you're not in the darkest place, whether you're in the darkest place or you're in a place where you're like, we just need a little bit of help, feel free to reach out to us. We'll connect you with Austin. Austin's been gracious enough for Ultimate Intimacy customers to offer about 15 minutes of time to get to know you and hear what's going on. And we really appreciate that as well too. So you can have an introductory call with Austin and
Yeah.
get to know him a little bit and see if he's the right fit. But we've seen so many couples that have benefited so greatly and seeing their marriage completely transform after visiting with Austin. In fact, some of our best friends just have an incredible marriage after working with Austin. So don't hesitate if you feel like you need a little bit of help. We really feel Austin can be a great benefit to you. So reach out to us and we'll put you in contact with him. And we appreciate you being on the podcast as always, Austin. It's always a pleasure. We love working with you. And until the next time, we hope all of you can find ultimate intimacy in your relationship.
thank you.